Let's go.
Wow. I don't know what to do with this chaotic energy right now.
I don't either, so I think we should go for it.
It's going to be fun. 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 Okay. Ready? Feeling good?
Yes.
Okay.
You know that I have a hard time reading this.
I know. Would it be more helpful if we had a teleprompter?
No.
Okay.
That would be worse.
And you don't have to read it. You just have to do something in the vein of. So.
Yes, obviously.
Right?
Yes.
Because, everyone, absolutely everyone has some kind of hot take on artificial intelligence, on AI. And if you go online, either half of the internet is convinced it's going to replace absolutely everyone, including professors.
Yeah. And the other half is writing think pieces about how none of this is actually going to do anything. We're all just imagining this, but at the same time, we're killing curiosity, we're killing imagination, and we're replacing all artists and probably killing your houseplants.
And I mean, if we're being really honest, I'm just sitting at home with a stack of papers that I need to give feedback on and thinking, how could I leverage this tool in order to, one, not only give my students better feedback, but also use this tool as a way to intervene in some of my own unconscious biases as I'm providing feedback.
But let's be clear. AI often will show you when you have a bad assignment design, and it will not fix it, because if your assignment is not very good, all that's going to happen is you're going to see that in the feedback that it produces.
Right. So it's kind of like if you give it not great resources, it's going to continue developing those not great resources and make them even less great. It's kind of like attempting to, duct tape a Tesla battery to a tricycle in hopes of making it go faster. And that just doesn't work.
And really, when you think about it, this is an opportunity. And I actually called for this as we were talking about AI in the last couple of years. And people asked me, what's the most important thing to do? I said, take a week in the summer, get all your faculty to be in small rooms together and redesign everything for the age of AI, because this is an opportunity, but this is also a serious task. You cannot just say, let's do what I did last semester, just strap some AI into it and that'll help me. It's not going to work, just like your Tesla on a tricycle. I mean,
it's not going to function.
No.
Not going to function, right? And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how we design assignments with AI from the very beginning, while also, not committing a FERPA violation. This is Guy. What do you do here?
I'm a professor, apparently, of everything here at UNL.
Everything all caps.
Everything all caps, especially if it's got AI in parentheses.
And I'm Nick Hughesby. I'm an associate professor of elementary literacy education, K-6, limiting my responsibilities here at UNL. And today we are climbing down an AI rabbit hole, thinking about what it does with student assignments and feedback and dance break.
All right. So let's start with the thing that I think everybody thinks about. When we start thinking about AI, the first in assignments, the first thing that people bring up is bias, and bias is real.
Oh yeah, totally real, right? And bias are these kind of markers where you perceive something differently based upon, in written work, verb usage, syntax, the way that the sentence is constructed, et cetera, that when we're thinking about responding to student work, we as faculty or instructors will sometimes respond better to, let's say, something that looks pleasing, something that's aesthetically delightful, right? Versus something that's a bit rougher in terms of how it looks, but has solid ideas, right? So it's kind of like substance over function. And a lot of that involves particularly thinking about our students' identities, right? And I don't think anyone, regardless of who you are, I mean, when's the last time you started a feedback process and was like, I'm going to engage in this bias. I want to try this bias muscle out this time.
I try not to be honest.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and I don't think anyone does.
Yes.
I think we have like quality criteria in our heads as we're working through feedback, but sometimes those quality criteria, just by being human, can often have some biases. So let's talk about some of the spaces where that's coming from and how we can maybe mediate that. So as you're thinking about the connection between bias and feedback, what are some of the things that in your career that you've tried to be aware of as you're thinking about feedback?
So I think that a few things that would not be classic bias, but it's something actually I think we think a lot about as instructors. The first one is time bias. And that is that the order by which you read, the first few papers you read are always a little bit different because you're kind of forming your baseline. They help you establish where you are, and so they tend to be a little bit different. If I get tired, if you're trying to read too many papers in a row, the papers towards the end tend to be a little bit, at least for me, a little bit sloppier in their response and in the feedback. And the magic is in the feedback, not just in grading. I mean, we are talking about quality feedback first and foremost. That's what takes us time. It's not the slapping on, this is very good, or this is mediocre, or those kind of things are a little bit easier because you get a sense of where the work is. But to give excellent feedback, you do need to do that. And what I've learned is I need to do them in smaller chunks. I cannot read 20 papers in a row because 18 and 19 will not get the best feedback I can produce. So time is one. When people challenge, I love students that challenge the work we do and push back a little bit, but there's always a moment where I need to check myself. Am I responding with critique because this is really not good, or because they challenged something I said? And now I'm responding to that. And I don't want conformity. I actually want students, when it's appropriate and backed up, to be able to push back. But that takes a little bit more time. And I think that gets easier as I got more comfortable in my role and in what I know in providing space for people to push back, yet to do excellent work. And so those are things that really, really were important. When you talk about the writing style, there's some things that really get me, right? And they're really superficial. I really dislike, for example, writing with a lot of transition words. That's really like, you are not working on your writing. Now, and if the assignment is writing, that's highly appropriate to talk about that. When the assignment isn't writing, it's less important, and you need to check yourself to make sure that it's not influencing it in that way. So,
well, and I think your notion of like time is a really big and important one, because when we're thinking about feedback, giving feedback on student work, that often seems like one of the most romanticized parts of being a professor, right? It's kind of like the writing piece where I'm going to have all this time and I'm going to be at the lake house. I'm going to thoughtfully be leaving, information for them in the margins of their papers. I want that job.
Yes.
Because that's not my reality. My reality is I typically have, if I'm lucky, hour chunks at the most. 15-minute chunks at the least, and trying to make sure that I am being uniform and not biased based upon just my exhaustion, my level of, you never, right? It's like running a marathon. You start really optimistic. I think this is what people do. I never start optimistic. Normally I start with, oh my gosh, I'm running a race. What is happening? But you start optimistic, so I hear, and then by the end, you're questioning every life choice you've made up to that point. And that's kind of like feedback. You just put me out of my misery. Not that students are misery. That's not what I'm saying. But feedback can feel like a slog. And
especially when you're starting to run behind.
Right.
And then you're like, I need to get all of this done. And I have only 2 hours and I have 30 students.
And so then
you can do the math. That's 4 minutes per student.
Which is not a lot. Like
with no coffee breaks.
That's barely enough to like open up your canvas and move to the next student, right? So there also comes this, like, you begin to maybe subconsciously reward those assignments that conform to what you think this should be.
Yeah.
And then anything
because
that kind
it's
of
easy.
Right, because it's easy, and anything that kind of challenges you, that you have to think about, that you need some time for, gets potentially penalized. And I'm not saying that any of this is on purpose. That's why biases exist, right? They're just these things that we are unconsciously thinking about. And so one of the books that I read this summer was Brave New Words, and Khan does a really nice job for me, of making the argument of how do we leverage AI as a tool to bring in timely, individualized, high-quality feedback as a partial solution, as a way for co-intelligence. So that was something that I really played with as an idea this summer. And part of the way that I did that was to redesign assignments with AI from the start. Like, this is a Brave New World moment. Like, AI is here. We have to work with it. And so what does it look like to shift from, oh, I am the person that they are going to learn from, to here are networks
of tools
that they're going to learn from. So before I blah about all the stuff that I did this summer, talk to me about how, because I know you've done some of this as well.
Yes, I have tried.
Ways that you've used AI as a co-designer when drafting assignments or planning for curriculum. How are you thinking about that?
So in drafting of assignments, I really think about what is the opportunity for AI to provide the quick feedback. And I have struggled with this, but to be one of the first readers. So I, from many years ago, I started relying a lot on peer feedback, because peer feedback, it teaches both the person reading it and the person receiving the feedback. Everybody gets to practice and everybody gets feedback early. And then I have a little bit more of a buffer time until I read an assignment, and I read a better assignment because they got feedback. So one of the ways that I'm using AI is actually for students to do a self-evaluation before I get to read the final product. Again, it means that my work is easier, not because AI reads it, but because AI read it, gave some feedback, and now students are ready for it. And they're producing a considerably better text with better organization. So that's something that I'm playing with, but I am struggling with it. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is because I wanted to learn what is it that you're doing to make sure that it's quality feedback, because the challenge that I've seen, and I've seen with many other people that talk to me about this, is that AI, when it gives feedback, tends to be, first of all, it tends to be too nice. It's just the way it's built.
Who are these chatties who are too nice? Because that is not mine.
Yeah, well, you built yours.
This is true. Mine is like, I expect more from you.
I need an energy boost in the morning. I do not need the AI telling me that they expect more from me. Anyway, That's just between us. I don't need that in my life. Obviously, you do. But they're nice chatties. They're nice to students. They always score 3 out of 4 on the rubric. They always find the things that work. And that is fine. I mean, I do want our students to get some positive feedback. I don't need them to be taken down by AI. But at the same time, it feels like they don't differentiate very well. So there needs to be extra work that happens there. And that's what I'm interested in. What is that extra work?
Okay,
man?
so let me talk about some of that extra work.
All right.
I do feel like I taught Children's Lit this summer. And I taught it last summer just as, ChatGPT was rolling out to massive amounts of people. And it made that online class not enjoyable. And so one of my challenges going into this summer was I wanted to make sure I didn't want to tear my face off by the end of the summer. Look, I keep it manageable. Keep it manageable.
Have some tomatoes, not tear my face off.
Right. I invest too much in the skincare to tear it off now, right? So I started at literally getting feedback for myself and started building assignments where I wanted to think about how could students leverage AI? Because AI, again, if you put junk in, you're going to get junk out.
Yeah.
And so how do I help my students figure out how to continually elevate what they're putting in? Because the mind shift I had was AI is not there simply to check it off a box.
Yeah.
AI is there to elevate their work, to put out the best possible version of whatever they're doing, and anything less than that perfection, or as close to perfect as you can get, right? We don't want a Rory Gilmore here. We all know how that ended. As close to great as they can get. And so what do I have to do in order to do that? So I started with the assignments themselves, where I plugged in what my assignment was, and my chatty and I talked about what are the strengths based upon what I'm trying to actually do with this assignment, what's the function leading back to my course objectives. And we just started there, here's the pluses, here's the minuses. And then we talked about rubrics. I had rubrics. We talked about how they then matched based upon what I wanted the function to be. We revised that a little bit. It was this really interesting iterative process. And then I started with my chatty developing fake student work. I would plug in specific content that was coming from class, talking about what was it that I was hoping to get at. And Chatty would generate, based upon a student profile, a piece of work coming out of that assignment. And then what we would do is it would ask me a series of questions to figure out what was most important in that assignment. And did it match up with what I was saying was most important in that assignment through the rubrics, through the descriptions. And we did that a couple of different times. We, as though it's a collective noun.
Well, it is co-intelligence.
It is co-intelligence, right? But
so what I'm hearing, and I think this is really an important point, is the point to start with AI is not when it's late at night and you have a pile of papers. This is the wrong time to try and do that.
No.
I'm doing a pile of papers as if we get paper. It's all on digital. It's okay. We're saving the planet. But, we're burning the planet on the energy side while we're saving it with the paper side.
We are a heap of cheerfulness this morning, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And so what I am saying is, what I'm hearing from you, and is really important, this is not an out when you're desperate. At that point, it's too late. Just read the damn papers and think about your life choices. This is really where it's at.
Time block.
Yes.
You're going to have to time block better. Understand that.
And also manage your assignment load, right? I talk about this often. We talked about it in the past. There might be too many assignments in your class if you're always finding yourself in that situation.
Yes. Yeah, so you always want to be aware of that. And this is not a Band-Aid. This is a this shifted everything for me.
Yeah, it's a design.
And for students.
Yes.
Right? And so after we've done that, after we've talked that through, one of the things that AI helped me do was generate lists of, look, these are common pitfalls.
Yeah.
These are common spaces for success. And here's how we're going to revise both your description and your rubric in order to help that out. And also, here's recommendations for how to use AI to get into that proficient category, right? And so I had a really solid assignment set across my entire semester. So students were then able to do that. And when working with actual student work, there's some things that we have to do to keep it ethical and compliant.
So this is really on my mind because I do know that everything we sent to ChatGPT or whatever you're using might be used for training. It might reveal identities. There's some serious both ethical issues about who owns this text and all of that, but also we have FERPA. I mean, we have rules.
Oh yeah. And so things that you want to pay attention to, like you have an enterprise license, which what that means with ChatGPT is that it doesn't train the larger model. So there are some protections there, but not enough to be FERPA compliant, right? So first things first, I was really clear with my students about occasionally I might use AI, I might use ChatGPT to, help me with feedback. Because it's just me. And when you're teaching an online course, that's a little isolating.
Yes,
right?
More than a little.
And so giving them an assent form, like that's okay, that's not, let me tell you how I'm going to use it. Just as I ask you to account for how you're using it, I am going to also account for how I'm using it with your work. And anytime that I needed to actually use snippets of student work, like sometimes I'm not quite understanding what's happening here in this paragraph, or I'm not quite sure how these ideas relate to each other. Help me think that through. I would, if they said no, would not do that and take my best guess. Right? Or I would paraphrase to my chatty what was happening there, how to help me make sense of it. Or if I cut and pasted it, I always made sure it was anonymized. And never from the original source. So never from the file. I would always paste it over into my notes app and then paste that over so that metadata
doesn't come with it.
Come with it, right? And so what that then allowed me to do was I got some relief from that heavy cognitive load. Like it really did make a difference. It kind of felt like that drive assist on my car, not a Tesla, despite the battery mentioned earlier, but a VW. And the kinds of difference that makes on a road trip for me, it felt like this made a difference for me in that feedback grind. Because at the very end, I've got like 6 days of nothing but 8-hour feedback days. Because of how it's structured. And so the transparency feels important. And the guardrails, me sharing that here's the feedback. If you want to check me, here's the chatty conversation that I had with it. It added an extra 2 seconds. But was super helpful.
So for me, hearing about this, I do this, but a little bit different. One is I focus on an AI constitution. And what I mean by that is I have some ideas about how AI might be used, but then I open that discussion to the students before we all agree on AI, and they can opt out. So I do use the opt out. If you want to completely opt out, that's fine. I don't really use take the text and put it in AI. What I do use is my comments tend to be one of my colleagues once said, hi, Kathy. One of my colleagues once said, you are pithy. And I am pithy in my comments. So what I do use my chatty is to make my pithiness a little bit more explanatory. And that works really well for me because it does know my style and it does thicken it a little bit. So the explanation is more robust and students can actually pick up on what I'm aiming at. And that is incredibly effective because then I can write my pithy comments. I bring the comments. I do not touch their text at all. I bring the comments to my chatty and say, hey, make it a little more robust. And then I need to play with it and make sure that it's really what I meant. But it often does a fairly good job. And with time, it does a better job. So.
And I think the important thing that I forgot to mention is I'm doing all of this within the context of the discussion I've had about that assignment.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So that I've trained the AI, spent lots of hours on that one assignment and have refined both my thinking and the AI's thinking around how that's working. And so it's not just contextualized, but it's really thoughtful in terms of what I'm trying to get done within that assignment because that thinking's there. And that really made a huge difference.
Yeah.
I think this summer for both myself and the students. And it also helped me think through and about what's the most important feedback that they need to hear right now, because we have only so much space for that. What's the praise that I want to give? What do I want to recognize and elevate? And then what do I want to push on?
Yeah.
And AI was really helpful with that as well.
All right.
So
what we're not telling you is that you can just get yourself an AI and the AI will do all the grading. There's a lot of discussions about agents right now. You cannot yet create an agent that does all the grading while you're watching your favorite Bake Off season. I am so eager for another season, by the way. I can feel it.
Okay,
I need comfort.
There's never been a more clear distinction right now because you're like, Bake Off, and I'm like, Severance.
Yes.
Great. Which, okay, so passing this off might be tempting, but don't do it.
So what we're saying is if you plan for it, build assignments for AI and let students know. It is critically important because if students find, and we just had this conversation this weekend with a teacher, if students find post-fact that you've used AI and did not tell them, you might face some resistance that would not be there if you started with saying, here's how I'm thinking about it. Let's all have some time to process. I'm letting you use AI and I'm expecting you sometimes, but you can opt out. And I'm going to use AI, but here's how I'm doing it. This is a really important conversation to have to make sure that there's an understanding and you're honest about the work you're doing.
Yeah, it's also fair as well, right? Like instead of saying, oh, you can't use AI, you say, I'm expecting you to use AI and I'm expecting you to use it in a way that elevates your work. You're doing it, I'm doing it, we're all doing it. It's like the Macarena and it's 1996. That's how that's going, right?
Okay, Macarena reference is a new one, but okay.
Really?
Yeah. Have we talked about Macarena before? I don't think so. I think you should watch all of the previous episodes to see if there's been a Macarena reference.
Maybe
but
not.
I'm pretty sure there was.
Look, I can bring in new stuff.
So, really, when you think about the process, you have to plan for it. You have to let your students know. You've got to make sure that if you are using anything inside AI, you are anonymizing it. You are asking for permission, and it will improve your feedback, but you do have to check also against the bias of AI itself.
Right.
And that's important aspect that we'll probably get back to in the future.
And so I think the question that we want to leave you with is not that notion of should we use AI for feedback? I think that's the wrong question.
It's really whether we have the guts to face the age of AI and say, I have to redesign my assignments. I cannot be lazy about this. I actually have to look at everything that I have, especially if you're teaching online, but even in person, and see what is it that I want to do. And after I redesign the assignments, really think about what feedback will matter for our students.
Exactly. We need to think about this as a partner in the work that we do, but we have to also use it ethically and responsibly. That's ultimately our goal. So I think that wraps up
Yeah, that wraps up
this episode
of Not That Kind of Doctor.
with a Macarena reference. All right. We'll see you in the next one.